For example, over the course of the last week, we have reported on the implications of a new court ruling from a federal judge in Washington, D.C. This is a judge who ruled that the Trump administration Attorney General, William Barr, had been, in the judge's word, quote, disingenuous. He had been disingenuous. He had effectively lied, not just to the American people and to Congress, but also to the court, which is a bad thing to do if you're anybody, but particularly if you're the Attorney General of the United States. In an angry ruling, or at least a ruling that appeared to be driven by some emotion, she very bluntly ordered the Justice Department to release a document that they've been trying to keep secret for years. This is the document that William Barr, when he was Attorney General, he used this document to create a purported justification for the Justice Department not bringing criminal charges against former President Donald Trump. The Robert Mueller investigation into Russia interfering in our election in 2016, that investigation, when they produced their report, they published copious details of more than 10 instances for which there was significant evidence that former President Trump might have committed crimes. Specifically, he might have committed obstruction of justice. It was just a week and a half ago that this federal judge ruled that Attorney General William Barr, contrary to his public statements, contrary to his statements to the court, she ruled that Barr actually never substantively considered the evidence against Trump. She ruled from her review of the record that William Barr just determined from the outset, regardless of the evidence, that Trump would not be charged. And in her ruling, she has ordered the Justice Department to release documents about that really soon, by Monday. I mean, the Justice Department under new management, under Merrick Garland, could appeal that. But if they don't, she's ordered them to release that document that the Trump Justice Department tried to keep secret for all these years. But she's already told us what her review of that document and of the Justice Department's actions around that time indicate about the process that was followed in terms of deciding whether or not Trump would be criminally charged. What she's told us already in her ruling is that the Justice Department didn't substantively consider potential criminal charges against former President Trump, despite the evidence that was laid out against him. But of course, now they could. And on top of that very pregnant revelation about the former president and his potential criminal liability, the expected release of that document they wanted kept secret, which we think will come out on Monday of next week. On top of all that, late last night, we got this new news that a deal has been reached, finally, after all this time, for President Trump's White House counsel, Don McGahn, to testify for the first time about what he saw in the Trump White House and what former President Trump did while he was in office. And this is a big deal. Because, as I said, the Mueller investigation outlined in detail more than 10 instances in which President Trump arguably committed felony obstruction of justice while he was in the White House. Most of those incidents were described basically through the eyes of Don McGahn. McGahn, as Trump's White House counsel, gave multiple interviews over dozens of hours to Mueller's prosecutors. And those prosecutors determined by the rules of the road that it wasn't their call as to whether or not an indictment should be the end purpose of McGahn's testimony, whether they should take McGahn's testimony about Trump's behavior and use it to seek a criminal indictment of Donald Trump. They said they couldn't make that decision. They couldn't try to bring an indictment against Trump because there was a Justice Department policy against indicting any sitting president. But they also said explicitly that that same Justice Department policy, quote, also recognizes that a president does not have immunity after he leaves office. Well, Donald Trump has left office. There is no Justice Department policy protecting him from being indicted now. The statute of limitations has not run on the conduct that was described in the Mueller report. And the evidence against him in terms of these multiple serious allegations of obstruction of justice, that evidence was, in the Mueller report, obtained and preserved, laid out in a very orderly way by Mueller's investigators. A federal judge has just ruled within the past 2 weeks that the Justice Department at the time, they never looked substantively at that evidence while Trump was president. They never made a substantive determination as to whether or not criminal charges against Trump were warranted. The Justice Department is now free to make that determination if they want to. And Just last night, a deal was finally reached to finally have testimony for the first time from the main witness against the former president for those obstruction of justice allegations. Seems like a big deal.